Booktube, it's Amy. It's a blustery, snowy Saturday here in Ottawa, and I'm indoors with my books, and so I thought I'd pop back in with Will Y. Darling's The Private Papers of a Bankrupt Bookseller. And just a reminder, or if you're new to this series of videos, this is the fictional diary of a bookseller published in 1931. And today we are beginning on page 80 with the section titled Reprieve. How is it that in retrospect the late war seems pleasant to remember? I was free from anxiety about food or drink or indeed anything. Who worries about a future that seems not at all likely to be his? We had our hour. It is stand to. We will surely live till they bring up the Dixies with the tea and the dirty bacon and the lids. It is between 11 and 12. In the support line, the mess orderlies can be heard putting round the stew. We will last till then. It is 4. Tea will be round very soon, and cigarettes will come up after dark. We will live till then. And so we went round the clock. Life was an immediate thing and infinitely precious. We had it. We held it. We might part so soon, but we had it. And over the past, not even the gods have power. Tomorrow do thy worst, for I have had my hour. That was very often my feeling. It supported me wonderfully. But there were other times. Once in the salient in front of Zonbeck, they plastered us with the big stuff for hours. We were ordered out into no man's land after many casualties, and I remember clawing myself into the side of a shell hole in terror. My belly was quivering, and if I had had to stand erect, it would have fallen out, I felt. I prayed. If I were spared, I would be different. I would repent. I would never again. I would be better. I asked in Guessman depths that not this time. At 6, the bombardment stopped, and digging a new trench that night, I was chafing and bold and gay. I had been reprieved. And the next section here is titled Books About Food and Drink. So he's moving on from his recollections of the First World War. So books about food and drink. There is nothing that I know of in literature that deals with headaches. Burns, I know, with his address of the toothache, though hello, a disease, as I think he writes, but no one else has impressed my memory with their words on pain. There's a book which I remember Conan Doyle makes Dr. Watson refer to in the Sherlock Holmes series, The Mystery of Pain by James Hinton, but I have never handled it. My headaches are the consequence of ill dieting. I sometimes think, and yet I have never been able to find the road to right diet. The doctor I go to see is an excellent fellow, but cannot cure anything. He almost admits it. Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Merriman, in his opinion, are too big a consultative party. He thinks little of Dr. Diet, a good varied diet, something of everything. He knows nothing of Dr. Quiet, and as for Dr. Merriman, one man's jokes are another man's despair. After a day of headaches, I took to looking through my books for a remedy. My first, not an acrostic, is Diet for Men, written by a doctor whose description of himself somehow amused me. My head perhaps is weak still from the headaches. Here it is, Diet for Men by Cecil Webb Johnson, M.B., C.H.B., Major, R.A.M.C., T.F., late civil surgeon and officer commanding Station Hospital, Dum-Dum, surgeon in charge of native cantonment and followers, hospital, Dum-Dum, specialist in midwifery, diseases of women and children, 8th Lucknow Division, with an illustration. This writer has also written Diet for Women with 2 illustrations and How Not to Be Fat, apparently very mercifully with no illustrations. According to the publisher's announcement facing the title page, the first of these books, wrung from the Daily Chronicle, the following encomium: useful and entertaining, he has done brave service to our sex. While the Daily Graphic is allowed only one word, an ecstatic one, in its description of the work, the one word, splendid. I haven't Diet for Women in my stock, nor yet have I How Not to Be Fat, but I will procure both from Simpkins with Alercity if anyone desires them. I return to my diet for men, lest before the afternoon is out I sell it to a dyspeptic. It is readable enough, and what more do booksellers expect from their books? It isn't the fattest book, the author disclaiming that on his first page, but there is not much in it for a man who is laid out and laid low by headaches once or twice a week. That bang on the head I had in the war may have deranged or disordered what would be a better word. The cortex? It was a funny sensation. I never heard the shell coming. I was blown up in the air and fell. I fell on the pavé. My own impression was that I was bumped on the back of the head, but the mark was on my right forehead. Dr. Webb Johnson doesn't help much with such a headache any more than his colleagues did in the RAMC at the time. In fact, they never admitted that the headaches were due to the external action. They blamed my liver, and perhaps they were right, for the guess of a doctor's may be as near the truth as that of any other man. I am prone to liver disorders, I fancy, for I am fond of food. I am a gorger at times, a glutton, and yet it is a bookman's fault. Here Macaulay on Dr. Samuel Johnson, a bookman, and the son of a bookseller like myself. I quote from the essay in the Encyclopaedia Britannica, 1881 edition, a set of which I will sell bound, half-calf, slightly rubbed, for 3 guineas. I feel like, and for Johnson, as I write it. Being often very hungry when he sat down to his meals, he contracted a habit of eating with ravenous greediness. Even to the end of his life, and even at the tables of the great, the sight of food affected him as it affects wild beasts and birds of prey. His taste in cookery, formed in subterranean ordinaries and a la mode beef shops, was far from delicate. Whenever he was so fortunate as to have near him a hare that had been kept too long, or a meat pie made with rancid butter, he gorged himself with such violence that his being swelled and the moisture broke out on his forehead. My dear delicate Thomas Babington Macaulay, how disgusted you were! I can feel it, and yet I forgive you, for you never knew what it was to contract a habit, mark you, of eating with ravenous greediness. I am afraid that there were other reasons for Macaulay's dislike, though his essay on Johnson is the best thing he wrote to my mind. He disliked Tories as much as Johnson disliked Whigs. The first Whig was the devil, declares Johnson. Macaulay's counter is a glancing blow, but it shows the temper of the mind behind it. He, Johnson, was himself a Tory, not from rational conviction, but from mere passion. I hope these twain have made it up in the Elysian fields, where hack writers hunger and thirst no more, and finicking essayists are at rest. Food, eaten ravenously or delicately, is a great topic nonetheless. It is the only pleasure that recurs 3 times a day, and its only equal is sleep, which comes too with such satisfying regularity. My odd lot of books on food is good, mostly second-hand, but all worthwhile. I prefer to sell a cookery book to a novel. I rate my art high. Here are some of my selection of books on food and drink. Book of the Table, published by Kettner's, The Restaurant People, with a dedication to George Augustus Sala. Why Not Grow Young, by Robert Service, a book on diet and health. Marcel Boulston's Simple French Cookery for English Homes. Eating Without Fears, by G.F. Scottson Clark, a very jolly book by a bon viveur, and A Manual of Modern Cookery, a good practical book published by no less the University of London Press. The Gentle Art of Cookery and Lady Jekyll's Kitchen Essays I also have. They are good works, and probably these 2 books have done as much for the post-war homes of England, how beautiful they stand, as the Treaty of Versailles. Joseph Conrad's wife, too, had a good book in my collection, the introduction to which was written by her husband. The opening paragraph in my present phase of industry I will transcribe, for who knows, I may sell it on the morrow to one who would win her husband's love for a mess of pottage. Of all the books produced, writes the author of The Era of Gold, since the most remote ages of human talents and industry, those only that treat of cooking are, from a moral point of view, above suspicion. The intention of every other piece of prose may be discussed and even mistrusted, but the purpose of a cookery book is one and unmistakable. Its object can conceivably be no other than to increase the happiness of mankind. Conrad admits that he had found it impossible to read through a cookery book, even his wife's, but comes forward modestly and gratefully as a living example of her practice. Note the capitals, living example. I think this occasion is the only one where Conrad uses them, and be it noted, he used them to apostrophize himself. I have a very old edition in my stock, the title page of which I will also transcribe. The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy, of which are added 150 new receipts, a copious index, and a modern bill of fare for each month in the manner the dishes are placed upon the table by H. Glass, Edinburgh, printed for Alexander Donaldson, sold at his shops, number 48 in St. Paul's Churchyard, London and Edinburgh. Here is a well-told tale, headings and all, from page 230. To make an egg as big as 20. Part the yolks from the whites, strain them both separate through a sieve, tie the yolks up in a bladder in the form of a ball, boil them hard, then put this ball into another bladder and use the whites round it, tie it up, oval fashion, and boil it. These are used for grand salads. This is very pretty for a ragout. Boil 5 or 6 yolks together and lay in the middle of the ragout of eggs, and so you may make them of any size you please. Isn't that fine? The price of the book is 5 shillings and cheap. Old cookery books and ancient cuisine is an oddity, and I'm afraid bad stock. A know-all of a school teacher made me get it for him, as he thought it was by William Hazlitt. It is by W. Carew Hazlitt, and is in the Book Lover's Library, published in 1902. I would sell it willingly. My customer wouldn't take it, and perhaps unfairly I haven't taken to it either. The best book I have of this eating and drinking sort is George Saintsbury's Notes on a Cellar Book. It is a 3rd edition, but signed by the professor himself. It is all so good that I fear the day it may be bought. In fact, I doubt if I would part with it. Here the bold, full-blooded, honest man. There is no money among that which I have spent since I began to earn my living, of all the expenditure of which I am less ashamed, or which give me better value in return, than the price of the liquids chronicled in this booklet. When they were good, they pleased my senses, cheered my spirits, improved my moral and intellectual powers, besides enabling me to confer the same benefits on other people, and whether they were good or bad, the grapes that had yielded them were fruits of that tree of knowledge, which, as theologians too commonly forget to expound, it became not merely lawful but incumbent on us to use with discernment when our first mothers had paid the price for it and handed it on to us to pay for it likewise. My headache is gone. I have taken my cachet and drunk a cup of tea. I will go out. I feel righteous. I feel good. I will test the prophecy, for he hath filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he hath sent empty away. I have faith. I will be filled with good things, and will praise the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. And that is the end of that section there. The next section is titled Business Books, Books on Politics, etc. And that is a longer one. So we will leave it here today and come back in a day or two with business books. And I hope you're continuing to enjoy this reading aloud series of the Bankrupt Bookseller.